Hello stars, my name's Moon and welcome back to my YouTube channel. When you hear the name Harvest Moon, you probably think back to your childhood. Whether that was sitting in front of a 64, a GameCube, a 3DS, a PlayStation, or any old console, Harvest Moon was a staple in many of our lives. Even now, I find myself playing these games often as they just hold a level of replayability that you don't see with a lot of titles today. With the announcement of a new Story of Seasons game, I couldn't help but want to look deeper into the series as a whole and find out why people are so hesitant to pick up these games today. Harvest Moon is a farm simulation game developed by Amicus for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was developed primarily by this person here, whose name I don't want to butcher. Wada drew inspiration from his childhood in the countryside in a well-known game series known as Derby Stallion. Wada had a wish to make a fun role-playing game that didn't include combat and was more casual. The game follows a young man who is in charge of maintaining a farm he inherits from his grandfather. In the game, you do a variety of daily tasks, such as cleaning land, planting crops, selling crops, raising livestock, attending festivals, building relationships with villagers, and a lot more. At first, development for Harvest Moon was going great, but after some time of development, Packing In Video, the publisher for Harvest Moon, went bankrupt. The team was quickly forced to be downsized, shrinking from 10 members to only 3. With a much smaller budget than originally anticipated, the team spent the next 6 months finishing the game. This also meant that most of the game had to be reprogrammed from the ground up. The team pushed through and released the game through Packin' Video in 1996 in Japan, and through Natsume in North America the following year, and in Europe the year after. It's safe to say that the game was a success, selling over 100,000 units despite the recent release of the Nintendo 64 at the time. The game not only did well in Japan, but was also a success in both North America and Europe. Harvest Moon was the first farming simulator to ever be released, and people couldn't get enough of it. Electronic Gaming Monthly, an American video game magazine which offers things such as video game news and product reviews, had 3 different members on the review team praise the game for its original concept and the numerous interesting tasks a player must juggle. The game was receiving good reviews left and right, which sparked the beginning of a long and video game history-making legacy. After the success of Harvest Moon, it was only right that Packin' Video, now known as Victor Interactive, would make more games in the series. Some weren't as good as others, but overall the series was flourishing with every release. Harvest Moon Game Boy in 1997, Harvest Moon 64, Harvest Moon Game Boy Color 2, Harvest Moon Back to Nature in 1999, Harvest Moon Game Boy Color 3, and Harvest Moon for Girl in 2000, and finally Harvest Moon Save the Homeland in 2001 were all released during this time. The series would take a turn though after the release of Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town in 2003. At this point, the Harvest Moon series was popular worldwide, which was a good and bad thing for Victor Interactive. After the mainstream success of the title, the game began to attract the eyes of a larger company known as Marvelous Inc., who would eventually join forces with Victor Interactive in 2003 and merge to become Marvelous Interactive, later becoming Marvelous Entertainment in 2007. Now, honestly, this change didn't get noticed by many, as people still confuse who the developer of Harvest Moon is today. The series overall seemed to be doing fine after the merge, with the successful release of Harvest Moon A Wonderful Life in 2003 and Harvest Moon More Friends of Mineral Town the same year. The next new release from the series would happen in 2005 with the release of Harvest Moon DS, which wasn't as welcome as other titles. For many, the game felt a little same old. The title didn't bring much to the table, which was appreciated by older fans, but newer fans to the series found themselves getting bored very easily. Considering how unique A Wonderful Life was, Harvest Moon DS felt a little lackluster, but overall, people enjoyed the game enough. Harvest Moon Magical Melody and Harvest Moon Boy and Girl in 2005, Harvest Moon DS Cute and Harvest Moon DS Island of Happiness in 2007, Harvest Moon Tree of Tranquility, Harvest Moon DS Sunshine Island, and Harvest Moon Animal Parade in 2008, Harvest Moon DS Grand Bazaar, and Harvest Moon Hero of Leaf Valley in 2009, a spin-off Harvest Moon My Little Shop, and Harvest Moon The Tale of Two Towns in 2010, and finally Harvest Moon A New Beginning in 2012, were the next to release. But to fans, it was clear that the quality of the games was starting to go down. This is probably in recent years the most talked about thing when it comes to Harvest Moon. Sometime in 2014, people noticed a new series called Story of Seasons. The games were just like the popular Harvest Moon series, so people were confused on how someone could make a knockoff that was so incredibly similar. The thing was though, Story of Seasons was not a knockoff and was in fact pretty much a forced rebranding of the original Harvest Moon series. Now, let me explain. Ever since Harvest Moon released, a company named Natsume was responsible for releasing Victor Interactive's games in the West. After Victor Interactive and Marvelous merged, Natsume would continue to release their games in the West like they had before. The issue with this though is that Marvelous already had an in-house company that localized their games, known as Xseed Games. 2 years after the release of Harvest Moon: A New Beginning in 2012, Marvelous Entertainment would make the decision to drop Natsume and announce that Xseed Games from now on would be localizing the Harvest Moon series. There was one small issue with this though. Natsume owned the rights to the name Harvest Moon, leaving the company with no choice but to rename their beloved series to Story of Seasons. This meant that from Harvest Moon to Harvest Moon: A New Beginning, and any other Story of Seasons games which would release, were technically a new addition to the original series. Any other games to come though, such as The Lost Valley or Skytree Village, that have the Harvest Moon trademark is a completely different series. It's confusing, I know. I still get them mixed up sometimes. I know I didn't do the best job explaining it. So if you're so confused, I'm gonna link a video down below by the creator named Gamma. He made a whole video detailing the breakup and does a much better job than I do explaining it. Thank you, Gamma, for helping with my research. After the breakup, Natsume and Marvelous would go on to create a large amount of games. I think the easiest way to discuss them is separately, just so we don't confuse which series is which. Let's talk about Natsume's line of Harvest Moon games first. Owning the rights to the name of one of the most famous video game series is a big responsibility. The games that were released on the DS before the breakup were not as liked as the older games, so it would be up to Natsume to release something big for the series. In 2014, they would release the most sorry excuse for a Harvest Moon game I have ever seen. This game is known as Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley. I won't go into much detail about this game, but everything people loved about the old games was completely sucked out of it. On top of that, it introduced a weird terraforming system, so it felt more like a Minecraft knockoff. Considering how popular Harvest Moon is by itself, I have no clue why they thought that was necessary. They then would go on to release a mobile game called Harvest Moon: Seeds of Memory in 2026. 2026, that's not correct. They then would go on to release a mobile game called Harvest Moon: Seeds of Memory in 2016. The game looked nothing like the old games and appeared very cheaply made. Skytree Village would be released the same year. The game felt like they took The Lost Valley, reskinned it, and added some new features. Harvest Moon: Light of Hope in 2017, Harvest Moon: One World in 2021, Harvest Moon: The Winds of Anthos in 2023, and Harvest Moon: Home Sweet Home in 2024 would release soon after. It's like widely agreed upon that Winds of Anthos is a completely fine game. It's not amazing, but it holds up fairly well. Something that I find interesting is the extreme drop in quality when Natsume finally got to make these games on their own. The original creators of Harvest Moon loved this game like it was their child. Every game felt unique while keeping the core gameplay people loved. Natsume's Harvest Moons feel like they are sloppily put together and made more for profit than for a passion project. It's also worth noting that Natsume introduced the mobile world to the Harvest Moon series. Light of Hope, Harvest Moon: Home Sweet Home, and 2 spin-off games titled Little Farmers and Mad Dash would release on mobile. Whether this is a good or bad thing, I'll leave up to you, but you can probably tell my thoughts on that. As of right now, the next Harvest Moon game hasn't been announced yet, but honestly, I'm not expecting good things. Let's now go into Marvelous's line of Story of Season games, which as stated previously is a continuation of the OG Harvest Moon games. Unlike the garbage that is Natsume, these games still meant a lot to the development team at Marvelous, and they wanted them to have a good legacy. Their first game to be released would be simply titled Story of Seasons in 2014. Was the game amazing? No. Similarly to Natsume, it was clear that they were still getting the hang of things. This was okay though, because Marvelous would come out with Story of Seasons Trio of Towns in 2016. I am a little biased, but this game is honestly spectacular. Take everything you loved about the old games, update annoying mechanics, and add new mechanics that are actually useful. And you have an amazing Harvest Moon game. If I was in the market for a new Harvest Moon game and was scrolling through the 3DS eShop, Trio of Towns would have to be my pick over whatever garbage Natsume was pushing out. That's a bit harsh, I know, but I just love the Story of Seasons games over the new Harvest Moon ones. Marvelous would go on to release Pioneers of Olive Town on the Switch in 2021, which got amazing reviews. I honestly believe this is due to the amount of character cameos from past games, which are not only in the base game, but are also in DLC. It would also release remakes for both Friends of Mineral Town in 2019 and A Wonderful Life in 2023, which were also welcomed by fans with open arms. Now, you may be wondering, where's Story of Seasons now? In the 2023 Marvelous Games Showcase, we got a first look at their new game, which at the moment is untitled. In their showcase the next year, we would get an even closer look, and I couldn't be more excited. The game looks breathtaking, and I'm so excited to see where the team takes the Story of Seasons series. Harvest Moon has been through a lot over the years. From starting as just a small game to a well-known franchise, the game's had its ups and downs. I couldn't be more excited though to see where the series goes. If you guys would be interested in seeing me play these games on the channel, I would absolutely love to. Just let me know in the comments down below. Also, I just want to say thank you to all the people that complimented my posters back here on my poster wall. I appreciate it a lot. I actually have more posters and junk over here that you guys can't see off camera for different video games and web series. So if you guys would be interested in seeing a room tour, just let me know in the comments down below. Hey guys, Postmoon here, and thank you for watching today's video. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton. On your left, you can find my previous video, and on your right, you can find your next recommended video of mine. That's all for today. Goodbye, my stars!